formal mission of U equals me is stated as a movement of conscientious objectors to intolerance, or simply stated, a movement against intolerance. And the exploration of that statement really gets to what are the similarities between people? What do we all have in common? Why are we really equal as humankind? And that's what we're going to explore.
This podcast is about exploring conversational thoughts and interviews with extraordinary people living ordinary lives of well-being. Discussions on exactly what well-being means to people day to day, factors that can influence it both internally and externally. We glean insights on how to survive and thrive in feeling satisfied in life with a greater sense of purpose. Guest hosts bring fresh new outlooks and opinions from spirituality, science, worldviews, and standing up and speaking out for what's right.
It's pretty interesting. Man needs each other and planet Earth to survive. Check it out. I think you'll like what you hear.
Hello and welcome to our U equals me podcast. I want to welcome our friends and family from around the world. We appreciate you listening, and we are over the top thrilled to introduce you to Nselaa Ward today. Today you're going to hear her story of a resilient, beautiful woman whose life inspires millions of people from around the world. Welcome, Nselaa.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
We're just thrilled. I want to read your bio here. This is really a fun one and an incredible one. Some people know you as the former notorious attorney during Black Lives Matter who defied the system, or one of the top female slam poets in the world, or the professional troublemaker for the National Organization for Women, the largest women's organization in the world. People that have heard her speak in person know that this wasn't always her story. Before she became Nselaa Ward, Juris Doctor, she was Carmel the sex worker. And when you hear her speak live, she tells an addictive story of resilience and how you can be your own superhero, even when the world thinks you're a villain. People have seen her on TLC's reality TV show She's in Charge, CNN, C-SPAN, BET, and on the stage of the March for Women's Lives, the largest march in the history of the U.S. for its time. But live, you get behind the scenes with the real-life version of How to Get Away with Murder. Find out how Nselaa Ward, Juris Doctor, went from bars to bars to bars, yet no bars can break the unbreakable. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Where should we start?
I don't know. It's a lot, so I'm open to starting where you like to start.
Well, let's start with, I love your story. You tell the story that when you were 12 years old, your mother had an addictive problem, and so you started working at a very early age.
Yes. So actually, when I was 8 years old, my mom became addicted to crack cocaine. And in my community, because we were surrounded by a lot of people that was addicted to crack cocaine, especially during this time in the 80s, there was a big surge of crack cocaine that was planted into the Black community. So we call them rock stars because they were surviving crack cocaine addiction. So I was surrounded by a lot of rock stars, and my mom, she was one of those amazing rock stars that survived crack cocaine addiction. And actually, when I was 11, one day she didn't come home. I was with my little brothers. I had two little brothers at the time. One was 4 years old, and one was a baby, wasn't even 1 year old yet. He was a few months old. And it was around Christmas time. And the reason that I remember it was around Christmas time, I was 11 at the time, was because we didn't get any presents that year. And my grandmother called me because we didn't get any presents that year. And she was like, hey, what you guys get for Christmas? What Santa Claus bring you? And I was like, Santa Claus didn't bring us anything this year. And she was like, what do you mean? Santa Claus always brings you something. And she was right, because one thing that my mother always did is that she always made sure that she provided for us by any means necessary. Even though she had her addictions and other problems in life. She made sure that she provided for her children by any means necessary. And that's where I got my hustle from is from my mother.
Mm-hmm.
So it was unusual. And I was used to my mom disappearing occasionally because, she would, get high for a couple of days and she might be gone for 2 or 3 days. We would call those missions. So anytime she was gone for a couple of days, we would say, mom's gone on a mission. She'll be back soon.
Uh-huh.
And so yeah, I was used to her disappearing for a couple of days, but this had been well over a week, going on 2 weeks, and it was Christmas that she didn't show up. And
Mm.
that was a red flag to my grandparents that something was wrong because she didn't come home for Christmas. And
Mm.
that's something that she didn't normally did. So they sent my uncle to come check on me and my little brothers. And they came down. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time. And they went to all the jails and, then they went to the hospitals and they found out that she had been shot.
Oh my
She had been
goodness.
shot in a crack cocaine deal that went bad. And she was actually, and she survived it, but she was initially paralyzed for a few years. And that's when, my life kind of took this huge turn
Yeah.
because my mom could no longer take care of us. And I ended up moving to Wilson, North Carolina. We call it Wide Awake Wilson,
Mm.
with my grandmother. And at that point in time, while I was in Wide Awake Wilson, I was introduced to sex work.
Because it was big money. Well, maybe not big money then, but it was it was a means. What's really interesting to me, Zella, is that you were such a great student and you had this incredible brain. So here you are going into the sex work industry, but you still maintained your schooling.
I did. I did. School was always important to me. I was always the type of person that was in love with school. So I always made school a huge priority for me. When I was 8 years old, I was in a school play. And during that school play, there was an attorney that was playing in it, and I wanted to be the attorney. And at the time, my teacher thought that, I was kind of overstepping, my ability by wanting to be the attorney and that I should give some other students an opportunity. And I was like, no, this is what I want to do. And I ended up being so good at the position. Everybody was like, oh my God, you should be an attorney when you get older. And that was kind of that kind of sparked the interest for me to research a little bit more about what that meant to be an attorney. And then
Uh-huh.
I started to realize that was one of the things that people in our communities was lacking was legal support and
Mhm.
legal help.
Yeah,
So
representation.
that's exactly right. Yes, the
Mhm.
representation. And so I decided that I wanted to be an attorney very, very early in life. I was always able to kind of see that vision, even though I was doing other things. So it felt like at that point, like I had two lives. Like in school, I was very studious. I was always, the top of my class. I
Mhm.
participated in every academic, accelerator that there was. And then, when I went home, I lived this different life. So yes, school was very important.
So, you have this mathematical mind which earned you a scholarship, so you actually were able to, get a scholarship to school.
You have you know a lot. Um,
I love this story. I've been trying to get all the information, and it's such a beautiful story because the perseverance, that you just kept going after it and going after it and capturing it. I love that.
I always grew up with this mentality that not to be afraid of no. No
Mhm.
didn't mean that it was impossible. So I did. I went to this. I was accepted to the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics when I was 15 years old, which is a school that they take the top 2% of the students in their communities, in the counties, and they take them away from their high schools and put them in college courses. So yes, I was accepted there, and then in undergraduate, I got a scholarship, and then in law school, I also got a scholarship. So yes, academics was very important to me, and a lot of it was because I wasn't afraid of the no. Like I came from a community, with my mom and my uncles. They always made a way, no matter what. I remember, if you know anything about the sex worker industry, or dealing with rock stars, and dealing with people that are in the hood. That's what we call them. We was in the hood.
Hmm.
We would have you know people that were addicted. They would always come and they would like, let me get $5. And initially you would be very, very just frustrated with them asking you, because you knew when you saw them that they was gonna come and ask you for some money. And it was, no
Hmm.
matter how many times you told them no, they would still come back and ask you like you never told them no in the first place. So, I knew growing up, because I grew around these people that grew up around these people that they weren't afraid of no. Like to them, no just meant that they didn't understand what it was that you were offering. So they would come back, the next day and ask you again, like you never said no. So this gave me the resilience really to not be afraid of the no. When I encountered it later on in life, because believe me, just dealing with law school, dealing with attorney regulation, opening up my own law firm, dealing with clients, I was told no over 1,000 times. And
Right.
a lot of times that I did want to quit and say, you know what, this is not for me. They know about my criminal history. They know that I did sex work. They don't like me. They think I'm a bad person. I'm black. There's not a lot of black lawyers around. I'm a woman. People don't respect me. There was
Hmm.
all these opportunities that told me that, I should just give up because it wasn't going to be right for me. But because I grew up in this community that wasn't afraid of no, and they just kept pushing forward, I knew that I just had to keep pushing forward, even through those no's.
Mm-hmm. And you started, I think, during the time you were taking your bars, perhaps. This is when you had to tell, um, you had to talk about the sex work that you had done in the past. Was that how this all came out? Was there an issue with law school or taking the bar where this past, well, and you said criminal past, this is when you had to say, okay, I'm just going to put it all out on the table. This is what my life was.
I mean, it wasn't something that I always talked about just
Right.
openly, because I was trying to, especially when I was a lot younger, I was trying to just live a whole separate life. I just wanted
Right.
to show that I wasn't the stereotype, that I wasn't just another black girl,
Yeah.
that grew up in the hood, that I wasn't, another statistic that was important to me. So I wanted to have like a completely separate life and be a separate person. So it was very difficult for me to
Understandable.
have
Yeah.
conversations about my past and my history, because and I didn't want people to judge me either. Like I always
Right.
felt like I was afraid of judgment, very much so in the beginning. But attorney regulation, they had
Yeah.
a different opinion. So when I was trying to, when I initially wanted to be admitted to the bar, they did tell me no. They was like, no, like this is not gonna work. Like this is your history. You've done all of these things. How do we
You
know
don't right.
you're
You
not
don't
gonna piss
belong in
your
this club.
pants?
Yeah.
Yeah, they was like, you're not allowed in this club.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was hard. It was hard, but because I've been kicked out of every club that I have been a part of. So I was used to being kicked out of clubs.
That's
So
funny.
I I had to take it, with a light heart and keep pushing forward and just say, you know what? I know you don't want me to be in this club, but you obviously don't know what it is that I'm offering you. So let me
Right.
reframe and rephrase it for you.
Yeah, good for you. On a couple of the podcasts that I listen to, Zella, that you're on, you talk about some of the greatest um, tools you gained or gleaned were from your time working in the strip club, or you some valuable lessons, that lessons of trust, even your friend that
Mhm.
was, I love that story, the pole story. If you could tell that story, because it just, it's just heartwarming.
Oh man, yeah, I really did have to learn how to trust on an entirely different level, because all we had, and the strip club was just one area, that we use to promote sex work. A lot of
Hmm.
people don't really understand what is meant when people say sex work. And generally, I was on outside, exchanging money for sex. Sometimes that was on the corner. Sometimes that was at parks in the community, like, playgrounds. Sometimes
Hmm.
that was in trailer parks, and sometimes it was in a strip club. Sometimes it
Okay.
was even in, professional escort services. Like there was just a whole different variety of ways that we were selling sex at that point. But while I was in the strip club was actually one of my toughest gigs because I was a stripper that couldn't dance. That was my toughest one. Oh my God. Like,
That's
I've
funny.
always been a little bit rhythmically challenged, so I've had to figure out ways to be able to entertain people without them necessarily knowing that I couldn't dance. And that was kind of difficult when I was in the strip club. But one of the story that I told on my TED talk was just being willing to be. I had to learn to be vulnerable, just in so
Hmm.
many different levels. I had to learn to be vulnerable. There was, I didn't want anybody to know that I couldn't dance because I felt like they was gonna kick me out the club.
Right.
This is a whole different club. This was the strip club. They was gonna kick me out the strip club. if they knew, if they knew that I couldn't dance, So I would make
That's
sure,
funny.
like my strategy at the time was that I would always go first. I wanted to go first so that they didn't have anything to compare it to. Later on in the night, like if I was the first one, they gonna throw money just because I'm the first one, and I wouldn't have to do too much. But there was this other young lady at the time who, she wanted to go first too. She wanted to be the first one on stage, and she was the one that everybody loved because she was very curvy, very thick, very curvaceous. So she had a lot of seniority in the club. So every time I was trying to go first, she would try to jump in front of me. So the first couple of nights she would jump in front of me, and I didn't say anything about it because I was new to this particular club at the time, and I didn't want to start any problems. But I eventually realized that, if she kept jumping in front of me, I was going to have to do something about it because, you had to make sure that people also knew that they weren't going to be able to run over you when you was in this industry. Because once people know that they can run over you, they'll run over you every time. So
Hmm.
the third time she jumped in front of me, I had to prepare for a fight. you know, so I was like, if she jumped in front of me this time, it's gonna go down. So that day, I had my Vaseline ready. I started taking off my earrings, taking off my shoes just in case. And she saw that I was kind of ready when she jumped in front of me again. She saw that I was ready for something to go down, and she was like, you trying to go first, and I was like, yeah, I'm trying to go first. And she came to me and she was like, I know that it's important to you. You want to go first, but I'm not really trying to go behind somebody, that can really dance. She let me just go first, do what I can, and you can just go and kill it. So I was like, at that point, it rang to me that. She was just as untalented in the dance arena as I was,
Yeah. She couldn't
and
dance either.
in the beginning, I wasn't willing to be vulnerable, enough to just say, hey, I can't dance. I want to go first, but she was. And when
Hmm.
she showed me that vulnerability, it put me in a place where I realized, that I wasn't alone, and that really built a friendship with us. And
Hmm.
over the process, she ended up teaching me multiple ways to be able to make money on stage without ever dancing. So, I never had to worry about not being able to dance on stage again because I learned some other tricks, but it came from being vulnerable. And it really taught me
Hmm.
that I had to be vulnerable, throughout my life.
Hmm.
Don't just show people the ups and the downs. You have to learn to
Right.
trust each other so that
Yeah.
you can definitely work together to overcome what you figure out is a weakness but might not necessarily be a weakness.
Right. And you're still friends to this day, aren't you?
We are. We
That's
are. She actually
wonderful.
came to my birthday party last year. She came to my
That's
birthday
wonderful.
party.
Well, she could, even though she couldn't dance, she could do the splits.
She could um
That was a big deal.
or she could do the split. So you don't have to necessarily be the best dancer. So we was actually getting on the pole. See, one of the biggest and most beautiful things about having somebody on stage with you is that it's a method of distraction. Having two very curvaceous women on stage at the same time. So there was one opportunity where we both went on stage, but I would never get on the poles because I hadn't learned how to carry my weight on these poles yet. And I just knew that if I got on these poles, I was like, oh my God, the pole's gonna come crashing down. This is gonna be the end of my life. This is not gonna work, right? So we was on stage and she climbed up the pole. I was like, okay, she climbed up the pole. I'm not getting my big butt on that pole. She go by herself, right? But then she kind of motioned to me to get up here, right? And everybody saw her motion to me to get up there. So all of us, I knew at that point, I was like, okay, if I don't get on the pole right now, then everybody gonna know that I'm scared to get on this pole, and that's gonna be worse. So let me just try to figure something out on this pole. So, I try to use at the time my feet to push myself up the pole, and I'm really supposed to use my upper body strength. I know that now. I didn't know that then. But I used my feet to kind of push myself up the pole. So I realized, after I used both feet, that I was kind of halfway up the pole. So initially, I was super excited that I made it halfway up the pole, right? But once you're halfway up the pole and you don't have your feet to press against the ground anymore, you can't get the rest of the way up the pole. I didn't know this, right? On top of that, at this point, like I started getting really, really, really sweaty, right? So I'm just like slowly sliding down the pole, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be the most embarrassing moment that I've ever had. I knew that I shouldn't have trusted her. She did this on purpose. I'm gonna have to whoop her butt when I get out this club. That's what I was thinking, right? So what she ended up doing is that she did a clap and then she did a split, like right on the floor, real hard. That's how they do it in the South. When you go into like the Southern strip clubs with women of color, they dance real hard, like so you could hear it slap on the ground when she hit her butt on the ground, right? So she did a split on the ground, and then she kind of held her arms up as I was sliding down to make it seem like it was all coordinated, and everybody just loved it. And I was like, oh my God. Thank you, Jesus, for saving me at the strip club.
That's such a great story. And from that time on, you two bonded, and that's just a beautiful story. I love it.
It was. It taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about trusting and about helping other people, helping other people when we can, lifting while we're climbing. That was one of the biggest lessons that I learned in life, that we have to lift while we climb. And I learned that really early, before I ever started seeing any amount of success or happiness. I had to learn to lift while I climb.
What do you mean by that, Nselaa? What do you mean lift?
Lift while you climb, it means, a lot of times what happens is that we feel like we have to make it to the top. We have to get successful. We have to, get at the top of our game before we can look back and help anybody else up.
Oh, I see. I see. Yes. I see.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what she did for you. That's fabulous.
That's what she absolutely did for me. We have to look while we climb, while we're trying to make it to whatever our top is, because the top it's not necessarily financial or career wise, but whatever our top is, make sure that you're lifting somebody else up, helping somebody that's trying to get to their top as well.
Right. So you completed law school. You even opened your own firm.
I did.
Later on. And one thing that you said in one of your talks, I'm not sure which one it was, and I wish we could have seen you in Spain. I think we were in Spain the same time you were there doing your TED Talk. But
oh, wow.
Yeah, that would have been so fun. But you said in one of your talks that after you completed law school, you had your own firm. It still didn't make you feel whole. It still didn't make you feel like, okay, I'm here. I've arrived. So you talk about really your journey to the inside of the self, inside of yourself, and learning about who you truly are, and you also talk about being your own superhero, which I absolutely love.
Right. I spent a lot of time selling myself short, and I didn't even realize I was selling myself short, very, very early in life. Even when I was, 8, 9, 10 years old, 11 years old, like I remember so many elements around that was constantly reminding me that I was less worthy, somehow. Like I was
Mhm.
less worthy because I was black. Because I was less worthy because I didn't have a certain texture of hair. I was less worthy because my complexion wasn't as light. I was less worthy because I was a female. I was less worthy because I was thick or full figured. I had so many reminders inside of my community and outside of my community. And when I say inside of my community, that's, the people like my peers, people of color that look just like me, movies, television, school. There was constantly everywhere these reminders that I wasn't as valuable as some
Mhm.
of my other counterparts that didn't look like me. So there was constant times in my life where I was selling myself short. When I got into sex work, some of it was about the money, but the majority of it actually wasn't even about the money for me. The majority of what sex work was for me, it was, something tangible that showed me that I had value, because I
Mhm.
didn't have the reinforcements, in my own spirit, to assert that I was valuable to myself. So I was
Mhm.
looking for something that I could touch, something that I could feel, something that I could use to show other people, see, I'm valuable. This person is
Mhm.
willing to pay, for me, something that you guys are giving away for free. See how valuable I am. Look how
Right.
he values me. Look what he's willing to give me because I'm
Mhm.
me, So a lot of times
Yes.
I was selling myself short. I mean, at that point it was pennies, on the dollar,
Yeah.
$100 here, a couple of $100 there. But even if it was $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $100,000, I still would have been selling myself short, because I didn't really understand my value. So I was always looking for more, trying to prove that I was worthy. And I realized even later on when I started practicing in my law firm that I was doing some of the same things. I was selling myself short. Um, One of the things that happened is, I was, always trying to, in the beginning, I did business and bankruptcy law, right? So I was always trying to figure out how to get customers. Even though I might not have had as much experience as some of the other attorneys, or maybe I didn't have the connections to some of the other attorneys. So instead of charging initially $2,000 or $1,500 for a Chapter 7, when I first started, I was charging $300 for Chapter 7 bankruptcies, right? I really didn't know how much a Chapter 7 bankruptcy was worth in the first place, because I was working for a large firm before I started my own firm. I worked for a large firm where they did bankruptcies, but they never actually told me what they were charging, because I just billed the firm by the hour and they charged clients. So when I
Mhm.
left the firm, everything started being kind of secretive, so I didn't know how much to charge for a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So to me at the time, because I was still used to undervaluing myself, I was like, okay, $300. I'll charge $300 for a bankruptcy. And even though when I charged $300, I put an ad in the paper. I remember it was a local like magazine paper there. I put an ad. It was a 2-line ad, like Chapter 7 bankruptcies by an attorney for $300. And I got 100 clients that week. The first week I put the ad in the paper, I got 100 clients. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. Like I just made, almost $30,000. Like this is the
Yeah.
first time, I had, made any significant amount of money. So I was super excited about it. But
Mhm.
what I found in the process is that I didn't have enough hours in the day. I didn't have enough manpower to even be able to
Right.
serve the amount of clients that was coming in. Like I was getting so many clients that was coming in that it was taking so much of myself that by the end of the day, I was exhausted. Like I was
Right.
working 15, 16-hour days. I wasn't getting any sleep. I started to get to the point where I was annoyed every time clients called. I couldn't get all the bankruptcies done. Like it was just paperwork after paperwork, like so many hours that I was putting in, and I didn't have enough of myself to spread around. And because I was only charging $300 at the time, I didn't even have enough money to really be able to hire somebody else to do
Right.
the bankruptcies for me, right? So it was all relying on me, and I realized even at that point, like I started to see this pattern that I was still selling myself short, and I was
Mhm.
spreading so much of myself out, similar to what I was doing when I was a sex worker, and
Mhm.
I was just exhausted, and I was, at the time discussed it with my clients the same way I was, previously. because I
Mhm.
didn't even really know my own value. So it took me a long time to get to the point where I started to value myself and started stop looking for things on the outside, because that,
Mhm.
that law degree was something that I looked at on the outside, like, hey,
Right.
I have this law degree now. Look at me,
I'm all
I'm not
good.
serious
Mhm.
anymore. I'm all good now. Value
Yeah.
me. Right. That
Yeah.
law degree was a way, that I was trying to get the world to give me something tangible to show that I'm worth it. And then it was like, hey, look, I got my own law firm. Look at me. I'm valuable, right? I'm worthy. Show me that I'm worthy. And
Mhm.
I really had to stop looking outside, and I had to kind of step away from everything,
Yeah.
and just come back to Salah, you know. And I had to
Mhm.
base my value and my worthiness not based on what I was doing for other people, not based on my degrees, not based on, anything that was externally, but just based on me and who I
Mhm.
was. I had to come back to that. So that was a definitely a huge journey that I had to
Is
take in this process.
is that your superhero? Is that what you mean? Is that when you say, you've got to be your own superhero? It's a journey that's
Yes,
inside, not outside.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. You have to take that journey and understand your value and rescue yourself from the inside out and not from the outside in order
Mhm.
to be your own superhero.
Just take time that brings you back to yourself, or you were exhausted. You said, "This is it. I can't do this anymore." So then did you go into business, or how did it?
I was coming to a breaking point where I just didn't want to do it anymore. I was exhausted. At the
Mhm.
time I was raising my son. I was a single mom. I had, clients pulling at me from all over. I started having nightmares about clients
Mhm.
because I
Yeah.
just had so many people that were pulling from me and trying to get something out of me. Not just clients, but also employees. Like I had, and the most that I've had was 25 attorneys
Mm,
that were working for me. So
that's
I
a lot.
had, attorneys pulling at me,
Yeah.
employees pulling at me. I had clients pulling at me and family pulling at me, and I was just exhausted. And I was like, you know what, I had to really step away and
Mhm.
do some personal development. And it's really, really interesting because I was never a big person on personal development before. Like I was always big on business development. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 11.
Mhm.
Even sex
Yeah,
work is entrepreneurship.
it is.
So
Yeah.
I've always been really big on business development. And I remember once somebody came to me, a close friend of mine, and they were like, I see all the business development that you're doing, but what about personal development? I was like, oh, I don't really be doing the personal development. I always feel like those are kind of scams. Like
Uh-huh.
I'm really a business development person, right? But it
Yeah.
wasn't until I started to really work on my personal development and my spiritual development that I was able to rescue myself. That I was
Mhm.
able to realize my own worth, and that's when
Mhm.
life really changed and really flipped for me. Like I had to step away from all the chaos, and I had to sit
Mhm.
still. I had
Yeah.
to I had to sit still and just listen to me,
Mhm.
and listen to my faith, and figure
Wow.
out what it is that was holding me back. But it wasn't until I got still that that started to change for me. I think that's what's happening with the world, even right now with coronavirus, is that we've had the opportunity to just be still. And it's
Mhm.
giving a lot of people a lot of reflection and opportunity to figure out how to rescue themselves, how to be their own
Right.
superhero.
Yes, and I think something that's interesting about this time is that, just like you say, you have to lift while you climb. Yeah, nobody's going to get there by themselves, and unity is what COVID is showing us here. With the
Hmm.
development of the vaccines and COVID being a global citizen, it's important that we wake up and work together and combine our strengths to do remarkable things for people in
Hmm.
the world. And that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing by sharing your stories and your intelligence, and you teach all sorts of classes on leadership and diversity. I'd like to hear a little bit more about some of the classes and business classes that you teach.
We do. I do. I do lectures all around the country and international at some points as well about leadership and diversity. We talk about white supremacy. We talk about being able to unite together as one. I do
Hmm.
also have a series that I really want to, it's one of my favorite series that we do called White Women Can We Talk?
I love
And
that. I love that.
yes, yes, and it's an opportunity. It's several different steps. So the initial stage of it that most people see is our online format where we have conversations like we get have conversations where women of color, black women, and white women, we just come together and we ask each other all the hard questions, the questions
Hmm.
that everybody told us that we couldn't have, and that we did, that if we said out loud that we would be considered racist, or we would be considered, you know, not about the team, or we wouldn't be good allies if we asked the questions. But if we're not able to ask the questions, then we can't get anywhere. Like we have to get to a
Right.
safe space where we can communicate and talk to each other and teach
Yeah.
each other how we can be better allies to each other. So it's a space where we can get together and ask all the questions and talk about what we really need in allyship. That's the first stage on the outer level. The more intense level is when we go to cities around the country after we have the initial online level. So the online level is really to kind of show people the proof of concept that black women and white women can get together, have conversations, and work together as a unit, and have these hard
Hmm.
conversations about what's going on in our communities. And then we
Yeah.
do a more intense level in person, where we go to the city and we workshop for 3 to 5 days, just on the different ways that we can connect together and be better allies. And we go through that healing process because there's a lot of healing that has to happen as well.
Exactly.
So we go through the healing, at least the initial tips of the healing, because it's a continuous process. And then we
Hmm.
build on our allyship.
I love that. That sounds like it should be a university course to me.
I
Really.
agree. I do. I think that we do need to have it in universities
I
across
do.
the country. There's a lot of healing that needs to be done that's not taught on the university level.
I agree. Would you say that racism is a learned behavior? I mean, it has to be.
Absolutely. I do think that racism is learned. Unfortunately, it's learned very early in life, so sometimes it's hard to differentiate.
Right.
Um, yes, it's definitely learned. So it's something that we have to unlearn. And unfortunately, it takes 10 times as long to unlearn something than it
Yes.
did to learn it. So it takes a lot more effort. So we have to
Yes.
be willing as a team and as a unit to put in the time and the energy to unlearn some of the bad habits that we've developed over time.
Right. Well, U equals me was started in 2014 for just exactly that, for people to realize that every person is worthy, no matter what your culture, what your race, what your religion, what your gender identity is, and judgments. I think almost every human being walking the face of the earth has been hurt by judgment, because what judgment does is it separates, and it makes
Mhm.
another one wrong, and it creates turbulence in our minds. And so I have always thought, like, in my opinion, if one is in his knowing of his own worth, there's no need to bully or hate. So I think that kids do learn it very early, and I think that there needs to be more more about more talks in primary education on what you just talked about, understanding each other and
Mhm.
loving each other for their differences, and their curly hair or their straight hair or the shape of their bodies, and I
Mhm.
think that It's like with kids, with this whole smoking thing. Kids would go to school, they would learn that, smoking was very bad for you, and they would come home and their parents would smoke. And the kids at a very early age, knew that this wasn't healthy, and they would say, you're not supposed to be smoking. And it's the same thing with, if we can somehow bring this into to a primary educational system where kids, if they go home and they hear, negative comments from their parents, it's the same thing. No, you're wrong. Everybody's equal. Just because they have different colored skin or different religious beliefs or different sexuality. So I love that. And I'm happy that you're working with that. I think we need to take it to the little people too. They get it.
They do.
They understand.
They
They do. Yeah.
my 10-year-old has been teaching me, like, ever since he's been 4, because sometimes we forget, and I love his innocence because he comes and
Mhm.
reminds me of the things that I've learned and the things that are natural. When I'm not doing something the way that I taught him to do it, he was like,
Right.
"Ma," he said, "you're being a hypocrite. You don't want to do that. This is what you need to do." So I'm so grateful to have my 10-year-old constantly remind me of how to be a better person.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, here we are coming up on 45 minutes. We need to have another podcast. I want to talk about all these classes that you teach, but how can people get in touch with you if they want to work with you? How can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So now, if they want to work with me on a business level, I do have a business architect firm here in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called
Mhm.
Ninaba and Associates. So they can always go to the website www.ninaba Ninaba firm firm.com, www.ninabafirm.com, and connect with me there. There's free consultations there. We help small to mid-sized businesses be able to scale their companies into Fortune 500 enterprise levels. So what we do is we go in and we help you to build the infrastructure of your company so that you're not constantly reinventing the wheel. And we put in
Right.
the systems and the organization that you need to be able to run a large company. So that's what we do with the company. So if they want to reach me there, they can always
That's
connect with
great.
me via the website. But I'm also on social media if they're interested in working on a diversity level, leadership level, and community-based organizing level. You can also reach me anywhere on social media. My Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, they're all the same. It's Nselaa Ward, but my name is spelled a little differently. The N is silent, so it's N like no, Nselaa Ward. Is my
That's
first and
great.
last name. So my Instagram is Nselaa Ward. My Twitter is Nselaa Ward. My Facebook is Nselaa Ward as well, but the page is Nselaa Ward's fan page, Nselaa Ward fan page. So you can find me there anytime. Inbox me or send me a comment so I know
Mhm.
who you are. I say hello. I would love, 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 love to absolutely connect and check out the Tech Talk as well. The Tech Talk, I
Yeah.
guess, maybe we can put a link here, but you can
Absolutely. We'll put it in the
like
show links.
Google,
Yeah.
yep, you can Google leadership and diversity lessons from the bar to be able to pull
Mhm.
up the TED Talk.
It's fabulous. I've watched it. It's fabulous. I just have to say. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know that I had asked you to close with one of your poems. We didn't even get to talk about your poetry.
Yes, 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 yes. I would love to close with a poem. Um,
That'd be awesome.
the piece is I'm gonna do is called Walking on Water.
Great.
He'd be 6. Knee-length jean shorts and a Spider-Man t-shirt, milk and donut powdered smiles. His locks would be shoulder length by now. And I walked 360 miles in his shoes to help him travel through the full cipher of his knowledge, to take his falls when he stumbles, the scratches of life on his knees, the hiccups in his tears, and trust me, there will be. There'll be times when he'll fall to his knees and he can't seem to stop bleeding. He'll hit the most sensitive parts of his funny bones and he won't be able to laugh. He'll twist his ankles in ways that will make him think it's broken. I can hear his gasp for air, trying to make out the words to tell his story, but the salty water keeps pushing them down. Too much of a revolutionary to call them tears, exaggerating his tears through his toothless frown, though it's not an exaggeration to him because he feels like it's broken. Mommy, please pick me up. I've fallen and I can't get up. I need you to come get me. And I run to him, holding out my arms, holding back my own salty water alarms, and I'll tell him, no, get up and walk. We have all walked on water to get here. Here is where it hurts, through aching ankles, when your arch nemesis becomes the arc of your foot felt detached from a soldier, tiptoeing through the trenched landmines of a rat carrying another brother soldier on his back, but it was already broken by the bushes who sprouted too thick to see the guns. You better run, nigga, run, through wounded windpipes, even when you can't seem to catch your breath, and tsunamis have left your lungs full of bullshit, like Katrina through lakes of limp and lifeless bodies, of your lungs full of bullshit, like Ike crashing through the crevices of Texas, felt just like a fist to the face. Could have sworn I heard Trump say, anime, just eat the cake, but in Texas, walk on water anyway. Then there was Jesus, who came walking on top of the sea. Peter called out to him and said, Lord, if it is you commanded me to walk, and he said, go now. Peter stepped down from his boat. His friends looked on in awe, looked down at the wind and the water, and became afraid of what he saw. Now, Lord, help me, spare your child. Jesus stretched his hands out to him and said, why do you doubt? Look back at the water you've treaded and realize you have nothing left to fear now. We have all walked on water to get here. Here is not a poem about religion. Here is a poem about being fearless, because you don't have to be Jesus to turn water into wine. Single mothers do it all the time. We overcome obstacles with each stride when we keep walking. Sister soldiers, keep your guns up. Don't look down and just keep walking when you're hurt. Don't stop loving. Don't look down and just keep walking. To my son, just keep walking. There's a story in your step. And sometimes life will hurt and might not let you tell it yourself, but walk on water. You'll twist your ankles in ways that will make you think it's broken. The tears will come like oceans, but walk on water. Baby boy, walk your story. Thank you.
Oh, Nselaa, that was just beautiful. Wow.
Thank
Just gorgeous. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us. A true privilege. Thank you for listening,
for
One
having me.
Worlders. Oh, thanks for coming. Thank you for giving us your time. Please share this podcast to further our global mission of compassion and equality. For those who wish to support the U equals Me Foundation, your tax-deductible purchases of U equals Me logo wear can be found at uequalsme.org or U equals Me Etsy store, all one word in your Google search. For a complimentary copy of our ebook, Wisdom Along the Way, a book of notes and quotes, you can join our One Worlders group email list at uequalsme.org. Links will be in the show notes. Much love around the world. Be safe, be kind, be you.